Good evening, everybody. This is Robin with another edition of Horror Pop After Midnight, and my guest tonight is writer John Cosper. How's it going, John?
Doing fine, Robin. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. It's been a while since I've talking to you.
It's been a long time, man. So, I mean, it seems like just yesterday we're hanging out in Chicago with Dr. D and all those wrestlers up there at the very first Starcast. And, yeah, it's been, it's been a lifetime. I mean, there was a pandemic in between there and then. So.
Oh, I know. That was a crazy pandemic. Yeah, you've wrote a lot of books. You wrote a lot of wrestling biographies on pro wrestlers, but you also wrote some books on another genre which you love is horror. So tell me about your Dead Park horror books. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah. So the Dead Park series started. This is my dad's fault. First of all, preface this: my dad passed away 3 years ago. My dad was always a big horror fan. He loved Stephen King, and he's the one that introduced me to all the sci-fi movies from the 50s and stuff, and everything that terrified me as a child. But ultimately, I fell in love with. A very seminal movie for me growing up was It Came from Hollywood. You familiar with that one?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So if folks haven't seen, actually, it's on YouTube. I think you can watch it. Dan Aykroyd, Cheech and Chong, Gilbert Adner, and John Candy introducing, the greatest clips. I mean, it's laid the foundation for so much of who I became as a sci-fi enthusiast and a horror enthusiast and everything, and just everything, highlighting everything from Plan 9 from Outer Space to Bride of the Monster to Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster. I mean, so many great movies. Black Belt Jones, one of my all-time favorites. I've got Black Belt Jones' autograph around here somewhere from a Friday Night Film Fest. But so my dad, like I said, he passed away 3 years ago, and shortly before he died, a couple of days before he went to the hospital, and where he went to the hospital, and 16 days later, unfortunately, he passed. He sends me a text, and he's like, "Hey, I had this weird dream. I thought it would make a great story." And he pitches me this idea about a guy starts a new job, and his first day on the job, he fires up the computer, fires up the printer, and a note prints out from the previous guy who sat at that desk that says, "You're in grave danger. This place is not what you think it is." And it was a cool idea. I didn't do anything with it, just kind of let it sit, especially, over everything that happened here in the next 3 weeks after that. But a couple months later, I was driving, and that story came to mind. And then I thought, wait a minute, I've got another horror story idea that takes place in an office. And it's like, no, I have two other horror story ideas that take place in an office. And I thought, well, maybe I could make these a trilogy. So, full disclosure, I worked in an office. I worked in cubicles for way too many years. I no longer do. And you'd have to drag me kicking and screaming back into that. Mostly because I just like my freedom being at home. But also, I mean, the office is just a weird place. But it's really weird that I have all these office-related horror story ideas bouncing around. And as I started developing these three ideas, more of them, I started unearthing more of them that I had written, never finished, and I had a short film script that just the ending was never right. All of a sudden, I was like, "Oh, well, here's the ending now," and it all kind of came together in a book, which ended up being called Dead Park Plaza. Essentially, I tell people it's Tales from the Dark Side, but mixed with The Office. So it's horror comedy. There's blood. There's slasher stuff. There's cannibalism, there's monsters, there's vampires, there's all kinds of. There's a killer toilet in there too, I think. It just kind of came together as this little world. There's this 4-story office building called Dead Park Plaza. There's all a bunch of stories in the book, from different time periods and when different companies were in different levels of the building. The first 3 levels, nobody knows really what's on the fourth. There's nothing about the 4th floor. I just kind of kept that as mysterious and put it out. It was just kind of a fun little thing. And in creating the backstory for Dead Park, this office building is built on what used to be a former military base. And so right next door to the office park, you have the shopping mall, and then right next to that, you have the subdivision. Well, about a year later, I write a book about the shopping mall, and then I actually adapted another old story and made it a Dead Park Plaza story called Dead Park Records. And this one's it doesn't take place at Dead Park, but it's kind of shows you the reach of the evil of Dead Park and their company, where a record executive goes to this town and finds this guy and says, "Hey, you want to be a big recording star?" It's like, "I'll give you a recording contract. All you got to do is murder this woman you've never met before. Just go and kill her in cold blood." And doesn't tell her that there's already 4 or 5 other artists out there that are hunting for this girl, trying to kill her as well. So then after that, I wrote the book about Dead Park Estates, which is the subdivision next door as well. And at the moment, I'm actually developing books 5 and 6. Book 5 is going to go back to the office. Book 6 delves into the mysterious history of Dead Park and the military base that came before. So it's really just become this fun little world that just keeps coming back to me, and stories just keep popping up. I'd originally planned it, it was just going to be a one-off, and then it was going to be a trilogy. I've tried writing trilogies in the past before. I've written a lot of sci-fi and never was able to get that third book out. A third book kind of snuck up on me and surprised me. Then the fourth book came. And then the fifth book, I've got an end book in mind. Which right now, if all goes to plan, will actually be book 7. But I started getting ideas about The Office again. So book 5 is going to be Return to Dead Park. It's going to go back to The Office and more crazy office stories. And then again, book 6 is going to kind of delve into the history of the past of the military base. But some of the stories in here and just some of the fun stuff in there. One of the ones that I had always had in the back of my mind. And full disclosure, I never read Lord of the Flies, but I get the idea. And I thought, what if you call it Lord of the Files? The boss dies first thing in the morning, and the entire office goes tribal. The accountants turn on the customer service team, and then the outside sales comes in, and they take over and stuff like that. Everybody's going to tribal. Everybody's going to war with each other. There's another one where there's a young woman who finds out her boss is not the nice guy he seems to be, and that's the one where there's some cannibalism involved and everything, because something terrible happens to her and her fiance, and then she goes out for revenge. So and then book two is the one a lot of people say is their favorite. There's all kinds of crazy stuff in there. There's one where killer clowns with machetes start overrunning the place. In another story, there's a haunted RCA selective vision machine at the video rental place. You know what I'm talking about. I see it in your eyes. I've got 4 of them on display over here from the old James Bond. I've got Goldfinger, Thunderball, Live and Let Die, and Spy Who Loved. And Moonraker over there in the selective vision. But they fire up the selective vision. They watch a couple horror films, and one of them is about an Amish serial killer, and one of them is about prom queens with chainsaws. So next thing you know, half the mall's overrun with the prom queens with the chainsaws, and then they look on the other side. There's this woman on the ground screaming as this Amish guy is just slowly doing figure 8s, running over her again and again and again, in an attempt to murder her. And another one too, my kids kind of inspired is my kids and their best friends used to play this game. It creeped the heck out of us. They come down in the basement. There's some puppets down here. You might remember Clive the Zombie, my old friend who I used to make short films with, but they had this weird little chant about Mr. Puppet, Mr. Puppet, and of course there's a children's toy store at the mall, and Mr. Puppet is a character in that, and definitely one of the darker, more sinister stories. But how dark can it really be? It's about puppets. So, and as the universe kind of expanded, the cryptids have come into it. In book 4, somebody goes to a poker game attended by Bigfoot, the Hopkinsville Goblins, Mothman, and Madman Pondo. Deathmatch legend Madman Pondo. I got his permission, and who else would I expect to see in a poker game? Of course, Madman Pondo's going to be there. Then other legends come into it as well. The shopping mall has an arcade, and there was a Polybius machine in there for a short time, and a couple kids go in, they play the Polybius machine, and then the next morning, one of them is in jail because he's murdered one of his friends and his entire family, and nobody knows why. You find out why in later books too. Again, it's just these things kind of, at the time, I didn't know why this kid had murdered his family, but now I do. So it's just been this crazy little world that's kind of grown and taken on a life of its own. And, with book 6 that I just started too was, I've got a friend who, an actress friend, Christina Cannon, and she played a character that's not even in the book, for a promo that I put up for the first book where she's talking to this guy. And he's telling her about this terrible job he used to have, and she's this girl he's just, talking to online. And then her character became the girl that everybody's chasing and trying to murder in book 3. And now her character's got an even deeper backstory going into book 6, which just kind of, was a conversation between her and I, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's more to her story than that. So it just keeps growing, keeps expanding. I keep having to remind myself because naturally I'm just a comedy writer. It's like, okay, you got to put some horror elements into it. You got to freak people out. You got to do some really, really dark stuff somewhere along the lines. And it's in there, but there's definitely it's a lot of humor involved as well.
So, how are the fans of the books that are really enjoying it? You were mentioning that you had some fans that really enjoy it. How are the fans taking on the books when they read them?
Yeah, I hear from different people the things they like. You know, people that I've worked with in offices, I get messages. Is this person based on this person? And sometimes they're dead on and they're right. And the fans have really kind of triggered some of the stuff. You know, like I said, I'm kind of developing a story of, you know, the military base that came before. That wasn't something I was going to explore, but one of the guys who buys all the books, he's like, "When are you going to do one about the military base?" It's like, I don't really have any stories. Okay, yeah, I do. All of a sudden, he's like, "Oh, wait a minute. What about this? What about this?" And there's a really fun angle on that book is with each of the books. You know, these are stories. Kind of the conceit is there's an online forum somewhere where people share their stories about it. There's people that are brave enough to actually compile them and publish them and everything. With the military, I mean, all the military stuff's top secret. So, kind of the angle I'm taking with that book is everything that's going to be in that book has come from the viewpoint of the Russian intelligence agency that was spying on Dead Park, trying to find out. So anything we know from there is because, you know, there was a double agent somewhere or there was somebody sniffing out. You know, and it fits too because, you know, there's some secrets about Dead Park and the military base where they were, you know, there were some different programs for hunting Russian spies. So it's only fitting that we hear from the other side, you know, the spies that were hunted by these dark, mysterious forces that the United States had partnered up with years ago, who just all of a sudden appeared from another dimension. You know, we kind of get into it a little bit of hints here and there about the dark past of this place. There was a circus 100 years ago where terrible things happened, and then there was an incident on the military base where these strange creatures came and they were just overrunning and just slaughtering people, and then this mysterious man comes from out of nowhere. I can take care of your problem, but I got a couple terms and conditions. And rather than just being some dark overlord with a, you know, evil robe and whatever, somebody's just a nice guy with a smiling face who just wants an office, you know, and maybe some jobs for some of my evil, twisted monster friends. So
That's pretty good. Also, with your son, you know, during the pandemic, you did the world's shortest horror films. Tell me about that.
yeah, so my son and I during COVID on Saturday mornings we'd go out. I was like, what's something we can do? Well, let's go play tennis. So we went out, we played tennis every Saturday, and then we would go through the drive-through somewhere. Ended up funny thing. My wife one day it was a glove box. She was like, "Why do you have a box of plastic forks in your glove box?" It's like because Denny's didn't always give us forks when we got to go at Denny's, so I had to stop at Walgreens and buy so we could eat our pancakes one day. But we got to talking about, you know, what if you had a series of super short horror? And the reason there's super short horror films is the stupid decisions that somebody makes at the beginning of the movie that just leads to all the terrible stuff. They make the other choice. They do the right thing, you know? So it's just kind of the world's shortest horror films where people have common sense and they're just not going to go there. My favorite one is just called The Wolfman. And these are literally like 5-10 second bits. You know, this guy's talking to his doctor. He's like, so I was at the park the other day. I get bit by this dog. I think it was a werewolf. What do I do? Then you see the doctor pull a gun out and go, "Goodbye, Ted." You know, I mean, just short and sweet, you know, and, you know, it's like, "Hey, do you think we should go to the cabin in the woods?" "No, bugs." "Okay, we won't go to the cabin," you know, or, you know, we found a sarcophagus with a warning on it. So we left it where it was and we went back home, you know, and but that way, it was funny. We started with one idea that went to another idea, and I think we ended up with like 15 of them. So, then about a year later, I went back and did another series called The World's Shortest Noir Films. And again, it's just film noir, but instead of thinking, you know, with other organs of their body, everybody thinks with their head and does the right thing, you know. When the femme fatale comes along and says, "You believe me, Johnny, don't you?" He just shoots her. No, she's not going to believe you. Not going to follow along with you. So, I've kicked around an idea for World's Shortest Rom-Coms, too. We might get around to that at some point. But that was a lot of fun. It was just fun collaborating with my son and coming up with ideas. And, you know, everybody's sitting at home. Everybody's bored to death. You know, what are we going to do? And just, you know, putting the word out, "Hey, I need some actors to do stuff." And we wrote it so that everybody could film their own scenes. You know, one guy at his house filmed the part saying, "I was in the woods the other night." Another guy at his house filmed the part, "Goodbye, Ted," pulling out the gun and pretending to shoot. You cut them together. And, yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun.
That's pretty cool. Now, tell me a little bit of Zombies of Oz. That sounds pretty interesting.
Oh, that was a fun project. I actually started That started as a Facebook post years ago, and I put up an idea. What if he did The Wizard of Oz, but there were zombies, and Dorothy's a juvenile delinquent, Scarecrow's a gun trigger happy redneck, your Cowardly Lion is a shell shocked Marine, and your Tin Woodsman is a cyborg. And a filmmaker friend of mine said, "Hey, you write up a screenplay for that, and I'll produce it." So it never got produced. There were some discussions and everything, and the wonderful, beautiful Ronnie Jonah was brought into the conversations as well. Which, if you read the book, if you see the cover of the book, I've got the cover of the book right here.
Yeah.
The one thing that stuck from Ronnie being around is Dorothy's a redhead. So, yeah, I never went anywhere as a screenplay, but one day I was like, you know what? I can just turn it into some fiction, put it out on Kindle, put it on a paperback, see what people think of it. And people really enjoyed it too, Again, just kind of, it's a different take on The Wizard of Oz. It's one of those public domain things, so you can do whatever you want with it, even before people were turning Winnie the Pooh into a horror icon. But yeah, Dorothy's just this rotten, just nasty, awful teenage bitch, and she's been sent to live with Uncle Henry and Aunt Em, and they can't control her. They don't know what to do with her. And then all of a sudden the storm hits, but this storm is actually bringing a deadly virus. It's turning people into zombies. When she comes to, she doesn't know where Aunt Em and Uncle Henry are, and the world's been overrun with zombies. She gets sent looking for this mysterious Oz Labs, where there's this wizard, quote unquote, a scientist who supposedly has a cure for everything. The witch is in it. Toto is in it. Toto, I think Pitbull or Rottweiler, I don't remember. So all the high points are in it, but it's just a lot more violence, a lot more blood, and a lot more action than you would have seen in the original. Some musical numbers, but not as much as the original either. So.
That's cool. I'm gonna definitely have to get that book. That sounds fun. A Scarecrow's a redneck. I like that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Gun-toted redneck with a shotgun. I mean, what else is it gonna be?
Oh my gosh, I love that. Speaking about how Winnie the Pooh is like in horror films. So what's your thoughts about now they're doing a horror film on Steamboat Mickey Mouse in a horror film because it's public domain now, called Screamboat Willie.
It's one of those things, Dr. Ian Malcolm, just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. Some of these are going to be good. Most of them are going to be terrible. You've got to do something fun. You've got to do something different with it, and you guys, it can't just be Winnie the Pooh is just hacking and slashing people, or whatever. I did hear that. Did I watch that one? I might have had it on and just had it in the background. But
there's two of them. There's two films.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, so, but, to me, you've got to do something fun. You got to do something different with it. I brainstormed with somebody on Peter Pan, because I think that one's committed to public domain as well as to a horror idea. It helped somebody kick some ideas around out in LA. I don't think anything ever came of it, but, it's just a matter of, it's just finding a different angle and finding some fun with it. So, one of the things I did, a while ago, it's not horror related, but I have a book called The Big Bad Goodnight, and that came from a mixed love of film noir and fairy tales. And it started with one short story called The Big Bad Goodnight, and it was kind of a film noir tale of the down on his luck, the big bad wolf. He's just looking for one more score, and then you get out of town, get out of this awful town, and maybe get out with his life and everything. And that's part of it was the odd out in a collection of like science fiction short stories in a book at one time, but that grew to be writing some other stories. My favorite of which is The Three Bears, which is basically, if you've seen Cape Fear, and the remake is great, but I'm talking about the Robert Mitchum, Gregory Peck Cape Fear. Yeah, Goldilocks is Robert Mitchum, and she's stalking the three bears out in the woods. That's still honestly one of my favorite stories I ever wrote. There's a great video up on YouTube. The very wonderful Meredith Keller out of Evansville, wonderful actress, had her shoot a video, just a selfie in the woods of Goldilocks stalking the bears, and she's the sweetest lady in the world, and she just plays this just awful, evil psycho version of Goldilocks. But that was to me that was that's what you've got to do with something like that. You've got to throw a completely different spin on it and throw a completely different angle on it that people have seen, rather than, I'm going to take this beloved character and jump and slay. I mean, it's kind of been done. Banana Splits did it first, so.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
speaking of Peter Pan, the creators from the Pooniverse, which they did the Winnie the Pooh films, they are bringing out a Peter Pan film where he's like very evil, and Tinkerbell is on heroin, and instead of using fairy dust, she uses heroin dust.
yeah, that's another one I probably won't watch. But so I don't know. You hit on some fun random ones. I'll tell you one I loved that I recently discovered. I saw it as a trailer on a VCR. So I miss, and I know you and I are in the same boat on this. I miss video rental stores like nobody's business. Like that was
Yeah.
my Friday night. My wife in college had a life and had a great time. I was at Hollywood Video every weekend and stuff, and looking at the cult movie section and different things. That's where I discovered Twin Peaks and all kinds of full moon video stuff, and that classic movie Oblivion, where George Takei is the drunk town doctor of this Western Cowboys and Aliens world, long before the Cowboys and Aliens movie that Spielberg and Jon Favreau did. So I'll go to Ben's Bargain Bin every now and then over here, and I'll look for a movie $2 to $4, $4 max, and to me I'm getting a movie and bringing it home. And I picked one up. It was a Shudder. I think it's the Heather Graham body switching movie. I think was the
Yeah.
one. But I popped that one in, and I see the trailer for this movie called Mayhem, and it looks so freaking cool. I turned off the DVD player. I went on Roku. I found it, and it's Steve Yeun from The Walking Dead and Samara Weaving, who I love from the Babysitter movies and also Ready or Not. And there we go, office-related humor again. It's absolutely wild. It's absolutely bonkers, and I absolutely positively love it. I think it's so much fun. Yeah, I mean, the stuff's out there, and it's stuff that flies under the radar. It might end up on Shudder. It might end up on Netflix. There's a lot of fun stuff out there, and it's just finding what you like and finding what you enjoy, and doing something creative and different with things, I think.
Since you've been writing books, and of course you did short films, and you've done screenplays, have you ever thought about maybe doing an indie short film or an indie like feature film, write a screenplay, and just make a film out of it?
I mean, that was what I did for years and years. Was trying to do that, and it's so much harder than you think it will be. And once I got married and I had kids and stuff like that, that had to come first. And I'm still very much open to working with people and adapting something into a film. I'm constantly, if I meet filmmakers, I'm sharing books with them. I'm giving them a copy of Dead Park Plaza or shops from Dead Park, or my older collection, which is called This Would Make a Great Movie, which actually several of the short stories in there have been turned into short films. Herschel Zahn created a really, really funny version of the story called Tolerance. That was kind of my spoof on political correctness, where it's a future world, man is living alongside of aliens, and because we want to be tolerant and we want to be respectful of our alien friends, we're getting rid of any and all sci-fi in which aliens are portrayed as being evil. And of course, it turns out the aliens are evil anyway. And then, what was it? Sidney Maples did The Telemarketer, which was a future world where instead of just calling you up on the phone, telemarketers now teleport into your house, and this guy teleports into the wrong place at the wrong time, where a man is out and his wife is sleeping with the neighbor, and then the husband comes home with a gun. So a couple of the shorts that got made out of that. I did have somebody turned a script into a feature film once called Sidekick, which was about a superhero sidekick who loses his job and is trying to find himself. And it had a really nice little premiere in Louisville, and it didn't really do much of anything with the film festivals. Probably it was 2 hours long. Definitely could have used a trim, given it was a comedy. But I'm certainly still open to that kind of a thing. And as to what my involvement will be, I don't know, the next couple of years, and maybe a little bit more involved. My kids will be going to college, and they'll be moving out, and that kind of a thing, and my wife and I'll be looking at each other going, "Oh no, what do we do?" So, I'm certainly always up for collaboration. I'm always up for if somebody sees a story that they like and says, "Hey, can I adapt this?" I'm like, "Oh, you go for it." There's some great stuff at Dead Park Plaza that originally started off as screenplay ideas. There's some great stuff at shops at Dead Park. Honestly, there's enough stories here. You could, if somebody wanted to adapt something for one of the streaming channels, you could create a series, and each week you have a different cast, you have a different story, but it all ties into the same universe. It all takes place in the same place, and some of the characters would come back here and there. Yeah, I love movies. I've always wanted to be a filmmaker. I always wanted to be a screenwriter. And it's, I've been through it many, many times. I've signed many option agreements on a whole lot of stories. Even some of our wrestling books, have had some option agreements signed and everything, and things have come to fruition. So, I will tell you a cool thing last year. Is Ash Abelson brought his film company to town here in Louisville. They filmed a movie about Mildred Burke. I got to know Ash. He actually called me out of the blue a year before anything happened in Louisville, asking me about Elvira Snodgrass, one of Mildred Burke's arch rivals and everything, because I had written her biography. And then, 9 months later, Terry Harper invites me to dinner with Ash and one of his production partners, because they're looking at Louisville as a possible location. So we got to meet in person for the first time. I brought him a copy of the Black Panther Jim Mitchell's book. And next thing you know, Black Panther Jim Mitchell's in the movie. And then literally last-minute decision, Elvira Snodgrass gets put in the movie too. So for me, that was a really cool thing. And then my kids and I went and worked as extras one night when they were filming over at one of the buildings downtown. They were filming some wrestling scenes. We got to see Walter Goggins working as Jack Pfeffer, which was just incredible to watch a guy like that playing that part. Or to do anything. I mean, he's Walter Goggins. But last thing of the night, they're like, okay, we're going to film everybody's entrance. And I had already seen Elvira earlier in the night. Elvira had done a run-in with Mae Young during a Mildred Burke match against Babs Wingo. But they introduced all the heels first. They brought them all out. And what's her name? Camille Brickhouse playing Jude Byers, whose biography I was writing at the time, and is now published. I get to see Camille come out as Jude Byers. I get to see Elvira Snodgrass. And then the last person they introduced, the last guy who comes out, drops his robe and goes running to the ring ready to fight, the Black Panther, Jim Mitchell. That was one of the coolest things I have ever got to be part of. I haven't worked on his story for so many years. And then watching this one lady in the front go, ooh, who is that guy? It's like, yeah. I wrote his book. You need to read his book. So... and it's really cool. I've got to know the actor who portrayed Mitchell in the movie since then. He's actually interested in turning Mitchell's story into a biopic, which not the first guy who's tried to do it. But no, I know the game. I know how difficult it is, even with all the streaming channels and trying to option things and all the things out there. It's hard unless you're just doing it on your own and you're doing it super, super low budget. It's just really, really hard. And I still every now and then, I'll get some people together and try to shoot a little short, 1-2 minute thing or something like that. But yeah, for me, I got the stories. There's better people than me at adapting them to the screen, and there's way better people than me at directing them. It takes a village. I got the story. I got the scenes. Let's go. Let's make a movie. I love it.
Hey, that's the way to be. And you're like a big sci-fi and horror fan too. And you mentioned your dad liked horror films too. So, was your father? Did he get you into the horror? And what was that one horror movie you watched together? And then what was that one horror movie that really got you to be a fan in the world of horror?
So, yeah, I was a scaredy cat as a kid. It really took a long time for me to come around to horror. Now, the horror comedy stuff. And particularly, the early stuff for me was like the B-movie stuff, watching an Ed Wood movie, watching the William Castle movie. William Castle is one of my absolute favorites anywhere. And we can talk, as much as I hated the remake of House on Haunted Hill, I love the remake of 13 Ghosts because, again, they just did something different and it did something fun with it. The thing that the first one that I went to see myself in the theater, it was because I'd read a whole bunch of stuff about it and I had to go see it, was Blair Witch. And I still love the Blair Witch Project. I think it's one of the most imaginative and fun and trivia. And it was just a great experience too. Was going to see it with friends, and then another friend of mine from church was there, and she comes up to me afterwards. It's just like, that was real. No, it was not real. It's like there was actors and everything. It was all a hoax. It was like, you swear to God that wasn't real. I was like, I swear it was not real. That was a fun one. And I read a book too called Monsters from the Inn. It kind of talked about horror being a parable about the wages of sin and things like that. And, as a person of faith, that kind of interested me. And I'm watching Hollow Man, of all things, in a hotel room, while I'm in the middle of reading the book. And I'm like, everything the guy's talking about in this book, point by point, desire gives birth to sin, which leads to death. It's like, oh my gosh, it is a parable about. So that fascinated me from that angle. But, I just kind of gradually got into it. My favorite horror stuff, I've seen all the classics. I love the Scream series. I think they're all fantastic. I got called a liar by the guy who played the babyface killer in Happy Death Day because I told him it was one of my favorite horror movies. Oh, you're a liar. No. I love the Happy Death Day movies. I was the only person in the theater to see The Hunt when that came out. Right before COVID shut the world down. Nobody even bothered to go see it in the theater. There was all that controversy about it. It's hysterical. It's fun. It's great. Not so much a horror movie, but, just kind of a, horrific idea behind it, but fun movie. We already talked about Ready or Not. We talked about the Babysitter movies. I think those are great. I may or may not have bootlegs of those because they don't always have Netflix, but I always want to have a copy of those on hand because they're fun. What was it? The Totally Killer, the one on Amazon?
Yeah, that's good. It was with the actress who played Sabrina.
Fun. Yep. Yeah, that one was a lot of fun too. So those are my things. The Fear Street trilogy too. That's another one.
The Fear Street trilogy was great.
That's outstanding. Yeah. So I'm still not over the bread slicer in the first. That was to me. That's the kind of when I'm looking for a gut wrenching. I need a gory scene. That's kind of the standard I'm looking to try to measure up to these days as far as writing something horrific. So, but I said for me it's been kind of a slow descent into it. I mean, it's only been in recent years that I saw the first Friday the 13th, which is amazing. As a former low budget filmmaker, that's amazing to watch. It's a lot of fun. The Halloween movies, I think I've seen most of them at this point. And I mean, obviously the original is a classic. It's just kind of a fun little world to dwell in. The Nightmare on Elm Street movies, I watched those years ago too. But horror comedies is really my wheelhouse. If you can make me laugh while you're scaring me, I think it's great. And we mentioned Blair Witch earlier. I'll go on record. I thought Book of Shadows was fun. I thought it was really original, really fun take on the whole Blair Witch thing. And obviously not what the fans wanted as a majority for a sequel to that movie, but I thought it was a lot of fun. And when they did the surprise sequel a couple years ago too, Blair Witch, I love that one. There's a jump in that one that still gets me every time. It's so great.
So where can everybody find you on social media for your books and see what you're doing next?
Absolutely. My Twitter is @John Cosper. That's Cosper. You can find me on Instagram @Dead Park Books. You can look up Dead Park Books on Facebook. My website is deadparkbooks.com. If you come to deadparkbooks.com, you'll get to learn all about Dead Park. You'll learn what it's like to live there, what it's like to work there. You'll find links to all these books. All the other books we talked about, Zombies of Oz, and Big Bad Goodnight are on there. I've got some thrillers and stuff like that on there too. That there's this book called The Girl Most Likely to Kill You. It's actually kind of a romantic spy thriller. There's a sequel and a prequel to that one, in the works as well. And if you like real life haunts too, I've got a book called The Haunting of Birmintown, which I co-wrote with Jeff Waldridge. He is the resident historian and expert on all things paranormal down there in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. And this book will take you inside the Anderson Hotel and the T.B. Rippey Mansion and all the spooky haunted places down there in central Kentucky. We had a blast writing this book. We're talking about writing a few more just kind of paranormal themed books centered on Kentucky and some of the legends down there. So, but deadparkbooks.com. That's the place. Come look at the bookstore. I've got a coupon up there now. I think if you use coupon code SUMMER, I think it's 20% off. And the cool thing about my site too, most of my books you can order them direct from me, which gives me more money than if you go to Amazon. But you can order them paperback, and you can also order them and download them immediately for Kindle. So if you're a Kindle reader, you can have something new on your Kindle tonight.
Yeah, that's the way to be. All right. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, it's my pleasure, man. It's good to talk to you. So
it's always
get together and hang out sometime.
Oh, we definitely will have to come down to Kentucky and hang out. And everybody, thank you for listening to Horror Pop After.